I used to need it. There we go. Oh, I think it's because I shut it off slow. It might have hit a little science thing in there. I used to need white noise all the time. I used to like have to sleep with my TV on and stuff, and now I value peace and quietness. I just set the timer for 30 minutes, and I always beat it, and then TV's off, and then anything, and then like it's just I want dead quietness. I don't even like to have dogs in the same bedroom because I don't want to hear them snoring. Carrie update. It's going to be a little quicker, but it's still important to show the process before we go over to the car. Last update, I talked about starting the front. The phase 1 of the front is going to be regarding this thing here that we'll talk about and the more structural foundation of the car. So this is the Crossmember. It's right side up how it would be. So this would be the front of the truck. This would be driver's side. The swingers are 3D printed, so this is all stuff that I sketched out. Jason kind of gave me parameters on the constraints of where I could draw, you know, meaning like primary pivot areas, clearances that we need. Gave me a big geometric chunk, and then I started to sketch the shape. This is going to be a stainless or chromoly machine part. Same with the rack adapter. Made it how like it almost has like a little overlay plate, but it's not an overlay, just for looks. But it's not just for looks because it doubles up the thickness there. Single swing. So this has been the process. Burke at Alpha Laser cut all this stuff for us. Luke assembled this. He root passed it, prepped it, and then I got it all final welded. So that's the thing when I say final welded. If you're building a car, there's many stages of final welding, you know, and it's been a thing where I have to be more descriptive sometimes, even with invoicing, because you'll get it. I'm going to say final welded 300 times throughout a build because, you know, it's like this, right? It's the lower engine crossmember / beam pivot and steering assembly, you know, and then that's final welded. And then you say you're building beam pivots or something else. Well, that's not a good reference. Say you're building radius arm mounts, then that's final welded. So it's not like the whole car. It's a series of these sub-assemblies. But this thing's pretty chunky. We had spacers. You know, we machined spacers for everything in here. So, you know, these are a couple thou over. But it's super crucial. I've learned the hard way with this, or even like it used to go from, I would put misalignments in there, like that would actually be from the rod end or whatever. And you have to check the tolerances on that, but then I'd put shims in there and it's just not effective, especially when you're burning these things hot. Even trying to align shims into a tight tolerance place, if you have to take them in and out, it sucks. So what we do is we have like drawers of these things, and some of them are typical, meaning that they work with different parts and assemblies, and then a lot of times we just have to machine, you know, stuff specific to the job that holds this thing true. So there's a bit of time in getting this thing welded and put together, but I think the payoff, you can see where the rack's gonna go. The payoff is gonna be great. I think I can even get some swingers and stuff in there for you guys. It's hard. I've been wanting to do like fab diaries with you guys, but I'm doing so much welding right now, and Joey and I need to figure out a lens or something, because that's the issue. Every time I try to, like, I'm just welding for hours, and if there was a way to have that camera hang out where it was easy to adjust, then it would be more to show you. But if it's just staring at a bright light that's pulsing back and forth, I don't know if that's optimal. So we printed all these things out for clearance. Good luck. And we can actually get everything in and swing everything and see if there's adjustments that need to be made. But you can kind of see what's going on here. And then there's going to be a rack adapter. I think it's this way, like this, and that'll go on the rack. So you're, instead of running a steering gear, you're running a rack that's swinging this thing, and then that's pulling on this swinger, and that swinger is tied to this swinger. So they're in unison. And then the tie rods, like you'd see on crossover steering on a beam truck, they will cross over and they'll follow. That's why, in theory, these guys are lined up right at each beam pivot. So when they're at rest and they're, not in any part of the steering, they're just at zero, they're in line with the beam pivot. And then when they move, they cycle and they steer the tires. So that's why you see like beams when a truck, most trucks now have crossover steering. It didn't used to be as prominent when it was in the early 2000s and stuff, but now everybody's got big shit and nice parts and nice components and fab work. And so like you see the beams drop out, and then you'll see the steering tie rods following the same consistency as the beams. We're gonna try, I don't know if this is gonna get straight tie rods, just because a lot of the setup, we're working with what's already there. So I'm gonna do everything I can to get straight tie rods. If we get straight tie rods, we're gonna do machined billet ones and try to do some custom machine work into those things so they don't just look like a basic piece of billet or a rod. It doesn't just look like this. I think there's ways to rifle it and put some good design in there and taper it. Only if we can get them where they're straight. One other thing that I have for a window on this is the knuckles that are on the beams. I can cut the steering knuckle off and adjust that, and we're not gonna have to redo the whole hub and everything. It's just the knuckle. So right now this is ready to go in the car. We're gonna have, I have a file that shows the scan data of this because Jason runs these a little long. And what I mean by that is, the frame rail, this fits inside the frame rails. So he'll leave some of this long where we can trim it. And it's not, when you weld these things, they don't just contract, but they expand and they do a bunch of weird shit. And so just leaving a little extra on here is dialed. And then what we'll be able to do is pull measurements on the frame, and we'll go look at that right now. And then we'll be able to get this thing right where it needs to be, where it's gonna fit in there and it's gonna be high and tight, and we can root pass and final weld it. What's ugly? This is ugly. A lot of that's ugly. I think that it's super easy to go snowballing on all this stuff and have the domino effect of, well, we're already doing that, well, we're gonna redo this, well, why don't we just do this? And it is so easy to say that stuff, and then it's really easy to follow up and cut it all out. And then you get into a bind for the next part, which is building it. And the time and money it takes to do that. So Jeff and I, we've kind of made a decision on the investment. This car has lived life. This Bronco has ran NORA. You guys have seen it if you pay attention to older builds. It used to be like a Red Bull can. It was blue and silver, and it was a full upholstered, caged, 4-linked Bronco. We used to do a lot of NORA, so it's got thousands of Baja miles on it already, but some of this older stuff, not necessarily anything wrong with it, just not how we do things and not up to date. But what we've done is we've drawn back all the chassis to where I know we can get a win with reconfiguring this thing properly, not just for looks, but for functionality. So we'll tie into all the cutoff tubes here. These are already dug in. They already clear the wiper mechanism, so we know we get factory wipers. And then really it's just going to be drawing back out. This whole steering gear mount, this is going to go away. And then what we have on that crossmember, the crossmember will go through here and it gets, you know, fit in here laterally. And then this whole area, the hang up with all four-wheel drive beam trucks is the pumpkin. The pumpkin, you know, since you're adding so much more mass on the beam, when it goes into compression, it's making contact with the frame. Hey. It's making contact with the frame and you're losing up travel. And so then what you have to do is you have to kind of build to the driver's side, and then, you know, the passenger side, even though it could travel more and you'd have more up travel, you have to limit it so it's equal. So what that cross member is doing is that's going to let us have a spot in here where we can gouge out this frame and we can cut up in here where we can maximize the up travel. If this is, you know, think about the ratio. So you're swinging from the beam pivot and then you're outwards here. So if we're able to cut 4 inches out of this thing, it's probably going to give us somewhere around 6 or 7 inches of up travel at the wheel. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to fit this thing in here, not tack it on, but just get it where it's good, mark where we can get away with this, and we're going to cut everything out, rebox it, and then if it gets really thin here, then what we'll end up doing is we'll just end up adding more mass up here. So we're carrying strength through that area where we removed all the, you know, trimmed all the fat out of it. So this is phase one. We're going to do this in phases. It's kind of the plan for Jeff and I is to, you know, get this thing just like it sounds, in phases. So get all the structure done, get bump stops mounted, get limit straps mounted, get the steering in here, and get the shock mounts done. So it's essentially just a roller. It doesn't have any components on it, but that's where we're going to close out phase one. And then phase two is going to be engine in, accessories on, possible dry sump. I'm hoping we can still run the dry sump. Coolers in, and, you know, sub-assembly. I'm going to build this thing out where the way I like to do this is I don't like to have all of this big gnarly structure and the diameter tubing and all this foundational structure go way out to like where the radiators and stuff. I'd rather have it go to where the shocks are. You know, so we'll kick the shocks back as much as we can and we'll lean them in as much as we can. We'll try to keep the shock mounts that are on here. And then right when the shocks, we know where the shocks are, we'll terminate all the chassis and draw it down, because that's really the key component for this thing for rigidity. Like the cooler and anything that goes in front of that, that's all an accessory and it's a sub-assembly. So that'll have a bulkhead up here, like a little knuckle that'll have a capture for a bolt. And then down here, same thing, so this whole thing can come off. For serviceability, it's huge, and then it's also for like a wreck. If you have stuff coming out here no matter what and you still roll, it's gonna ruin this stuff. And the better thing to do, at least in my bro science thinking, is have the sub-assembly be tidy to the shocks, where if something's out here, you know, and it's on the outer extremity and you have a crash or a rollover, this can come off and it can get replaced. You don't have to cut anything. You don't have to re-weld anything. You just unbolt it and then you make a new one, you put it on here. So right now it's just getting that piece placed into here, verifying all the steering, getting like the groundwork as far as the functionality of the suspension going, and then we'll check in on phase two. These beams are Solo Motorsports beams. I think there's one other set in existence, but they're, you know, I like the Cho beams and I like the craftsmanship of them and the design, but the thing about Bobby's is that's a 9-inch. Like you could put a 9-inch or a 10-inch, I believe, in the front, which is just a drop-in diff, versus like running a Dana 44 or Dana 50. So your gearing options and your strength options are way up there, versus your typical TTB front diff that goes in there. The thing that's different about this is not a typical hub, like an aftermarket race hub or something. This is like a unit bearing off of a Super Duty. Same with the axles. So it's meaty. It might not be the most visually stunning stuff, but I mean, this is stuff that'll last. And at the same time, like for Mexico, If you had an issue here, a bearing failure or something, this would totally be like an auto parts or a junkyard find. These cute little knuckles that are on here, these are pretty easy to take off. That's what I'm getting at. If, like, just right now visually, looking at where the tie rod would go through here versus the bypass mount, I don't know when you turn if it's gonna bring that so close that it can't clear it. So that's the thing, is it just, this is our last little hope, is if we're shooting for straight tie rods, this is gonna be the last thing that I can redo to try to get it right. And it's also gonna be cycling it for bump steer first, just see how we can make this thing operate as clean as possible. Weird when you start falling on dirt bikes again and you're 40 and you haven't eaten shit for a while like that. Like, I have stuff in my knees and stuff, and you forget what that pain is like when you like really smash into something, and it's shocking. So I'm learning lately like how to deal with that pain again of impact, and it's been good. But this one sucks because every time I go to lean over, it's like a gnarly road rash from this morning. So anyways, this is the Carrie update for the front. I think next time we look at this, definitely have this in, definitely have tubes drawn through. We tried to clip this at a point where there was no, because this had some funky bends and stuff in it where the 1, 2, 3, 4 locations were. But really, it's just gonna be about sleeving in here, getting a nice long sleeve, rosette tube. The other issue is this is 1 3/4. I think what we're gonna do is still transition into 2-inch, and I'm just gonna do it in a clean way that makes sense. This is still gonna get the wiper cowl and everything through here. So as much as I don't like going from a smaller tube to a larger tube, I'd rather it be consistent out here and be consistent with the rest of the car, which is 2-inch, including that front bumper. So it's literally like just this little chunk is the 1 3/4. But I'm gonna we'll get it good, and it's gonna come out here. We'll get the shocks in here. It's running the large shock package, 4-inch bypass and big fin reservoir. That's a piggyback reservoir on that. And then, actually, I don't think it's a piggyback. I think both of those shocks are remote, but it's a 3-inch coilover, 4-inch bypass, and then like extra large fin reservoirs. So those are gonna take up some real estate too. But anyways, this is our Carrie update. We're gonna go through this, one phase at a time. So let's just keep on track with this phase, and I won't get too far ahead. Thank you guys, have a good day.